AI similarly has the potential to make a ordinary teacher a super teacher, ordinary doctor a super doctor. I could go on and on, right? And it has the potential to do all that. But I think if we can make that happen for small businesses, then we would realize the dream that India has had for a long time, which is not a new dream, that India would be a little bit like Germany, where our small businesses are the cornerstone of our economy. Now, this has been a dream. We've never been able to bring it to reality. And if we deploy and build the right AI infrastructure and ecosystem, then we may be able to make it happen. So the question is, since that compute may not be always available to us, we have to play a game. And very frankly, we have to have something that we can use to negotiate. The Chinese, for example, are using rare earths to negotiate access to semiconductors. We'll have to do something like that. Our best bet is actually our data story. And so our goal is to use, if we are able to create a very compelling data infrastructure, then we have in fact built into that sufficient control primitives to also use it as a leverage point with the rest of the world, right? Because if you really want to solve for many of the health AI stuff, it'll be very hard to do it without Indian health data, right? Especially when it comes to orphan diseases, which are, the size of India makes a big difference. The reason we call it DAPA is because data empowerment and protection architecture, which is all about regulation. So our belief is that if we really think deeply about these things, then it is possible to redefine this paradox that we have, that you can either get innovation or you can get safety, right? Or you can get convenience or you can get protection. This can be redefined so that it's not a paradox at all. And so our effort is to, destroy this paradox. And the reason France made India co-chair of the AI summit is because of DAPA. And therefore, that's why Prime Minister, when he spoke at that summit, although it's a short speech of 4.5 minutes, he mentions DAPA. Specifically, most of the work right now is in the area of training data sets. Because remember, the first generation of AI that we know of, in the ChatGPT, LLM world, came by scraping the data from the internet and using that to train the models. And everybody had access to more or less the same data. Then you realize that it will be helpful if you can create other training data sets. For example, in India, that's focus of Bhashini, which is to create local language data sets. They're not readily available, but if you can unlock them and make them available in a public setting, that would be very useful. But what's going to happen next is actually the training will happen on data sets that will never go public. In your city, for example, you have Tata Memorial. They have wonderful data set for cancer, but you cannot put that out on a public site. It's never going to be possible. So what happens then is that you don't give the data to the model. Instead, the model travels to the data. So you create a secure environment, which is where that privacy sensitive data resides, and the model comes and visits that secure environment. And when the model is leaving, you kind of pat it down, inspect it to see that it's not memorized stuff and is taking it away. These kind of arrangements are all bespoke arrangements in the world. In fact, the folks in Denmark started it with health data. France uses it in a big way. Japan uses it in a big way. But they're all bespoke implementations. And, the insight that we got many years ago was if we could replace these bespoke arrangements with a DPI. The data is not DPI, but the data sharing infrastructure is a DPI. And then India would be able to unlock training data sets at scale, and that would allow us or Indian companies to build health AI models. So obviously the first type of data is the so-called public data, which is the web data that everybody has. The second type of data is non-personal data, right? And this could be behind a paywall. It doesn't have privacy concerns, but it may have monetization, for example, associated with it. A very good example of that is geospatial data, right? Which may be traffic data, satellite data, drone data, and so on and so forth. India has been focusing on geospatial data in a very, very big way. And the third type of data is, it is got privacy restrictions in it. So in a way, you can say web as a data collective is type 0, which has been around for some time. This geospatial data is type 1.
Okay.
And the health data is type 2. Now, if you really look at type 1 and type 2, there are some things that are common to both. For example, if I'm a data provider, how do I register myself to say I have some special data that I want to share with the rest of the world, and I should be able to then go and register somewhere as a data provider.
Yeah.
Then I should be able to update a catalog that you can use to find out as a data consumer whether you need that data or not. And so that's important. Third is that as a data consumer, you need to be able to decide, will you pay for it? Will you use the modality that is being talked about? And the modality will be different, because in type 1, the modality will be, you want this data, you get a JSON file, you get a silver copy of that data. In type 2, you never get the data. You get an API endpoint where you go and visit, and you go into a secure environment to be able to access that data, right? So these kind of APIs that are there, India is the first country in the world to standardize them. So in December of 2022, we started working on geospatial data. That has come to age. Part of that happens at ISC in Bangalore, and part of it happens in a wonderful space application center, which is called BISAC in Gandhinagar. They've done a tremendous job. And that's being opened up as we go forward, because as this space, India is generating a lot of geospatial data, right? Because, we are sending private satellites and other stuff that is happening. So this makes it very simple. So if I have any kind of geospatial data, I just need to go and register into one catalog, and then anybody can discover it. The data still stays with me. So I have not pooled my data anywhere. So it's called federated data sharing. And but the APIs are all standardized. And then that is also true for privacy sensitive data. So essentially what you're going to get is a lot of type 1 and type 2 data collectives. Type 1 data collectives there are lots of them in the world. And what India has done is to standardize. And that is a leap forward. It's not a very big leap forward, but nevertheless, it's a leap forward. But in type 2, India, I'm hesitant to say it like this, but I think it is fair to say India is the global leader in this at this point in time. And there are other companies like Snowflake, Databricks, which are trying to do stuff like that. But the approach that India has taken is more substantive, and all the claims that need to be made about privacy, monetization, etc., you have more assurance that these claims are working.
On that, a couple of days ago, this novelist called David Baldacci, he's a best-selling author. He had a congressional hearing in the US where he's talking about copyright protection, and he's saying like 70 books that he has published over a period of time. Many of them are bestsellers. Today, you are able to go to ChatGPT and say, write a novel for me, like a full-blown novel in the style of David Baldacci with these plot points, and you get a book.
Right.
So he's talking about, what about attribution here? What about monetization? So would something like that fit into the type 1 that you're talking about?
So it's a very, very good point that you raised. So what India is doing is that whether it is type 0, type 1 or type 2, you attach to that data set. You're talking about data sets, this data set of books that we're talking about. you attach to the data set the control primitives that you need. The control primitives can be copyright, can be monetization. I won't give it to you free, but it is, you have this very often in the financial sector. One sell side research analyst will say, I'll give you the report, but it's behind a paywall, right? And then it is privacy, and therefore, the privacy budget, which is a technical concept which comes from differential privacy. So you can assign all the control primitives. So in the Indian approach of DEPA, these control primitives are assigned by the data provider, but they're not enforced by the data provider. You go to a DPI, so to say, infrastructure that is being run by anybody, and you can be assured that the control primitives that you have will be enforced by that entity, by that data collective on your behalf. So in the Indian system, you can also apply that to copyright if you so want. New types of data collectives that we have where you have to implement this control primitives. You have to do this by essentially saying that the model visits the data rather than data visiting the model, right? So the model visiting the data means that it visits a secure environment. And if I am running a secure environment, then the question is, do I have privileged access to what is happening inside the secure environment? What confidential compute allows you to do is to get computational guarantees that even though I am providing the secure environment, I don't have any privileged access to that secure